Let's get salty!
Everyone, Zeddy here again today with a brand new video, and Hearthstone has been pushing the boundaries lately, creating cards that do crazier and crazier things, which have led to cards like Nexus, Prince Jafar having to be reworked, where its effect basically can't be stacked, or we had Fizzle, its snapshot as well, going to once per game, and it got me thinking about all the cards in Hearthstone history that were just kind of busted, created pretty poor play patterns that not only had to have like their stats or mana changed, they had to be completely or at least somewhat reworked with a text change on that card. So we're gonna go over some of the best examples I could think of. As always, feel free to share your own in the comments down below. And if you feel like I've earned your subscription, please hit that sub button down below. Give the video a like as we're on the road to 100,000 subscribers. So yeah, Jafar, Fizzle, pretty recent examples, but why don't we go to like the most iconic example? Hearthstone Commander became utterly broken when the whole Patron Warrior emerged during Black Rock Mountain, being able to give them all charge and your frothing charge, and absolutely a ridiculously strong deck. And as a result, back then, they didn't do a lot of nerfs, and they had never really done a rework, I think, at all. And outside of beta, of course. But regardless, Hearthstone Commander got destroyed. As we all know, your charge minions get +1 attack. They eventually reworked it again, so whenever you summon a minion, I think any minion, it would gain rush. And now it's back to where it is, and it's playable. And wow, there are like charge warriors out there, but this is definitely one of the most iconic examples of a card rework, and yeah, it did not land very well with a lot of people. Another recent example of a very old card, Sorcerer's Apprentice, the whole your spells cost 1 less, it recently got the not less than 1, same with Radiant Elemental. Both of them now have that rework, but for the longest time, this created like Exodias and insane tempo decks, and eventually got nerfed to 4, but it was still too problematic, especially with like Molten Reflection and just so many ways of cheating mana and copying things as Hearthstone has evolved to. Yeah, this card reworked to not less than 1 as it stands in Wild, and I guess Twist, if you ever want to play that mode. It exists, by the way. Blizzard, I think, has forgotten, but I haven't. I still try playing it, even with like the 10-minute queue times. This 1-drop, Iron Deep Trog, was one of the most busted 1-drops of all time with its release. It might not look that crazy right now. 1 mana 1/2, after your opponent casts a spell, summon another Iron Deep Trog. You know, it was still good after its rework, but the original version, it would summon a copy of this. So if you buffed it up, you played especially Paladin, like a Blessing of Kings, and then they cast a spell, you would get another buffed up Trog, and then you would get another one of those. It was ridiculous with like the cheap buffs you can apply, and without, you know, I guess a rush minion or being proactive on the board, there was no way to really remove an Iron Deep Trog. It was ridiculous, and yeah, they made it so it summoned another one, and still saw plenty of play after this rework. But yeah, that original version, absolutely disgusting. And what card is more disgusting than Mind Render Elusia? I still get PTSD from this card. As it stands, you just replace your hand with a copy of your opponent's until the end of turn, which you can get some value, play some stuff, or, you know, I think the Harvester of Envy can like steal the cards. You can do that kind of combo, but originally when this launched, not only was it 2 mana, but you didn't get a copy of your opponent's hand, you just got their hand. You got to play whatever was in it, and if you played it, it was gone. And on top of that, you also got their deck, so you could draw through their deck and steal stuff or play. It was just disgusting. And it was like Disruption then became like basically a time warp, where you would take an extra turn because you would just dump your hand and then play Elusia, and your opponent had no cards to try and answer your aggro board, and you would die because you had nothing, right? You would top deck one of their crappy like aggro cards, and that was just no good for you. As a result, yeah, it got nerfed heavily, reworked, and still actually sees play regardless of that. So just think about that for a minute. And speaking of time warp, yeah, Open the Waygate, the Mage Quest, was also reworked for different reasons. It got nerfed at one point from I think 5 to 8 spells, but the more important part, time warp. Take an extra turn once per game. Originally, it was just take an extra turn, so you could repeat that as many times as you could play Time Warp with a parrot. They eventually had to nerf the parrot to play around this, and then they made Romath right after that, and then Romath with like Potion of Illusion could just go infinite Time Warps, infinite turns, and not the most healthy play pattern. Although I wonder if that Ice Block card will ever get a treatment of like twice per game, once per game, because Hostage Mage and Wild, pretty much the same type of thing as infinite turns. You don't technically get infinite turns, but you basically get infinite turns. A more recent addition to this list is Tony, King of Piracy. This was originally a 5-mana 4/6, and I don't have the regular version, so I'll read the description here. You replace your deck with a copy of your opponent's Finale draw card. However, this used to just have an ongoing effect for 5 mana where you would just swap decks with your opponent and Finale draw a card. So you could play this and swap decks and just rip through their deck or kill them with fatigue or just do a bunch of gross things. In particular, the Jailer, which we'll talk about in a second. At the time, it would like delete your deck and then you would just, Tony, and it wasn't very nice. You could delete their deck and how are they going to respond to all that? It just led to really gross things in both Standard and Wild. As a result, got a mana increase and only gives a copy rather than the actual deck. And I feel like that was probably for the best. And the Jailer got a huge rework to the point where this card is just one of the worst cards out there. It's so unbelievably bad. It is a 10-mana 10/10 Battle Cry, destroy your deck. This minion gains immune. Before this, as I mentioned with Tony, it would delete your deck and all minions would be immune for the rest of the game, basically. All your minions. They could not be damaged or anything, targeted. The only way they could be destroyed is like a Twisting Nether, like a complete board wipe effect. And that was pretty nuts. And you had combos in Wild too. You had like Bolf or Melganis. So you had those two out there. They were immune. Your hero couldn't take damage, and unless they had a hard removal, you won the game. So they just gutted this card. This card is utterly useless as it is, but kind of needed and maybe could get another rework to maybe do something useful without breaking the game. Yogg-Saron Unleashed, which is currently still in Standard, has been through some stuff. Currently 10 mana. After this, use an ability, cast 2 random spells. You could like steal something, get the horde to hit each other, get some tendrils. But when this launched, what were they thinking? It was 15 mana, but instead of casting random spells like, you would expect a Yogg, no, it just costs 1 less for each spell you've cast this game. And with, Rogue, Druid that spams 0 mana spells and cheap Billy mana, they could play this on like turns 4 and 5 and then play it again. And it was utterly broken in Standard and Wild. It was just like, what were they thinking? It was one of those, I don't know what they were thinking. And very quickly, they almost had it in mind, like it was intentional to sell a mini set or something. Got nerfed to 9 mana and to this ability that we know right now, where you cast those random spells. And still one of the worst card launches ever, where it was just utterly broken, just made you not want to play the game, and got reworked in record time. Leeching Poison was a pretty innocent card when it came out. Right now, it's 1 mana. You just give your weapon lifesteal this turn. Not amazing, but when it came out, it was 2 mana, and you just give your weapon lifesteal permanently. And at the time, this card, Kingsbane, didn't exist, so it didn't seem that great. And then they made Kingsbane and all these buffs to go with it, and then you had an infinite lifesteal weapon. So you had infinite damage, you just couldn't die because you would hit for so much. Even like Doomerang, you would get like double dipping all the healing. I kind of loved the deck. I played like a Cold Light Oracle Mill version, one of the most toxic things you've ever seen, and it was just too good in Standard and Wild with Kingsbane. And as a result, it actually got a buff to 1 mana, but this rework was pretty significant. And can you imagine if they ever reverted? Kingsbane is still kind of a thing in Wild, but still, with the weapon buffs they make now, way more insane than what it used to be. Another pretty recent example, and if you guys heard me bitch about this card enough, Sonia Water Dancer, where after you play a 1-cost minion, get a copy of it that costs 0. It originally, not very long ago, was a 1-cost card, so you could get more spells and just whatever. It was gross. You could OTK with like basically whatever you wanted if you could get it down to 1. And with Rogue, especially with the Sandbox Scoundrel, whatever that pirate is, you could get a lot of things down to 1. And yeah, I think this change has worked out pretty well. And even right now with like the Templar Rogue, which is somewhat competitive, they use Sonya because it's really good with the minions still, so not a completely dead card, but definitely not as broken as it was when it launched. Twig of the World Tree is another card that when it launched, it wasn't amazing. It was good. You had 4 mana, 1/5 weapon. It took a long time to break, and it had Death Rattle. Not this, which is refresh your mana crystals, which, believe me, probably pretty happy it's not that. What it was gain 10 mana. Basically, you'd break the weapon and you would go to 10 mana, and then they made cards like Sphere of Sapience, a neutral weapon, so you could play Twig, Sphere, break it, and then just have full mana and destroy your opponent. It was a wild combo, wasn't ever like that in Standard, but as a result, it was just absurd. You could get that out so early and just do gross things, especially with like Guff or whatever, that they had to change it to refresh, and it doesn't see a lot of play. And same with like Floop's Gloop, right? That 1 mana spell, just be able to, you originally could just gain the mana, now it's refresh. Another nice rework. That card's still playable, Twig not as much, but both were obscenely gross. And I'll leave off with one that you can't actually see the rework. The card looks exactly the same as when it came out. Snip Snap, this magnetic echo mech with Death Rattle, summon 2 1/1 microbots, and basically every card that has the echo keyword on it right there basically has an unwritten rule in the game with a rework that it can't be less than 1. It can't go to 0 because Snip Snap coupled with Summoning Portal and Mech Warper, you could just play as many as you wanted. So as long as you had a mech on the board, you could create this gigantic infinite mech, and it completely dominated Wild for a very, very long time. And it was pretty gross, and they kind of had to rework the whole keyword just for Wild, even though there were some standard shenanigans they nerfed around that they could, like that Reckless Experiment or anything it was called. But as a result, yeah, Snip Snap, the echo mechanic got reworked entirely, which I don't know if that's happened all that often. I guess you could talk about like the triple root cards of Deathlight not being able to be discovered. That was a rework in a way as well. So let me know what I missed out on in the comments down below of reworks that you thought were pretty crazy or busted, and we'll see what reworks are in the future as, yeah, they keep pushing the boundaries. They're just bound to happen, right? The cards aren't designed with everything in the future in mind, and a lot of things get broken down the road. Anyways, if you enjoyed the video, please like and subscribe. Have a great day, and stay salty, my friends.